I never realized how much a simple hug can communicate until I started paying close attention to the way people naturally respond to it. Most women don't realize that the way they hug a man often tells him far more about how they feel than the words they say or the expression on their face. That one small moment can leave a lasting impression. And here's the surprising part. The women who naturally create strong emotional attraction are usually not doing anything complicated. They simply avoid a few common mistakes that many women make without even noticing. Those little habits quietly weaken the connection before the man even has a chance to understand why. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you think about physical connection. We've all heard the same advice while growing up. Be yourself, smile more, be confident. Those things absolutely matter. But almost nobody ever explains what actually happens inside a man's mind and body during something as simple as a hug. Nobody sits you down and says, here's what he feels. Here's what makes him naturally want to move closer. Here's what quietly makes him create distance. Most of us were never taught that part. So if you've been doing this without realizing the message it sends, it's completely understandable. How could you have known? In this video, I'll walk you through 3 hugging habits that many women repeat without thinking, even women who genuinely care about the man they're hugging. These habits slowly push men away even though the intention is completely different. Then I'll share one final approach that very few people ever talk about. It's the one that stays in his mind long after the moment ends. It's the kind of hug he remembers the next morning for reasons he can't fully explain. Make sure you stay until the end, because that last insight brings everything together in a way that surprises almost everyone. After years of studying relationships and listening to thousands of conversations from both men and women, one pattern keeps showing up again and again. The smallest physical moments often leave the deepest emotional memories. People usually think attraction grows only through long conversations, shared interests, or funny stories. Those things certainly help, but before any of that has time to settle in, something else happens first. The body begins collecting information almost instantly. Within the first few seconds of physical contact, a man is already sensing things his conscious mind hasn't even started thinking about. Does she feel relaxed around me? Is she comfortable being close to me? Does this moment feel natural or forced? Is she hugging me because she wants to, or because she feels expected to? His body starts answering those questions long before his mind puts them into words. That's simply how human beings are wired. We process physical signals incredibly fast, often much faster than spoken language. That's why a hug is never just a hug. It's a quiet conversation without words. It communicates comfort, openness, distance, nervousness, or genuine warmth. The difference between a hug that naturally brings someone closer and one that quietly creates distance is often much smaller than people imagine. Yet those tiny differences can shape how the entire interaction is remembered. Think back to the last time someone hugged you and you instantly felt that they were truly happy to see you. You didn't need to analyze it. You didn't stop to figure it out. You simply knew. The feeling reached you immediately. Now think about the opposite experience. A quick, polite hug. A hug where you could tell the other person was already thinking about leaving before it even began. You felt that too without anyone explaining it. That's exactly what happens when a man experiences your hug. He's not grading your technique or looking for perfection. His body is simply responding to yours. It receives the emotional message almost immediately, long before logic has a chance to catch up. That's why those first few seconds matter far more than most people realize. If this is already making you look at hugs differently, take a second to support the video. A quick like helps more people discover information that most of us were never taught growing up. And now let's look at the first habit that quietly works against attraction without anyone realizing it. The first habit is what I like to call the tapping hug. Almost everyone has done this at some point. You lean in, wrap your arms around him, and before you even notice it, your hand starts lightly tapping his back. Tap, tap, tap. It almost feels automatic. In the moment, it seems harmless. Maybe it even feels polite, but stop and think about when people usually use that movement. It's often how we comfort someone who's upset. It's how we hug relatives we rarely see. It's the kind of gesture that says, this is nice, but let's finish now. There's nothing intentionally cold about it, yet it doesn't create much emotional closeness either. To a man, it often feels like you're keeping the interaction safely contained instead of fully stepping into it. The important thing is that you probably never meant to send that message. Maybe you were nervous, maybe you weren't sure what to do with your hands, maybe it's simply become a habit over the years. But he doesn't know your intentions. He only experiences what his body feels in that moment, and what it often feels is hesitation. I've heard many men describe this without ever mentioning the tapping itself. They'll say things like, "I don't know what it was, she just felt a little distant." Or they'll explain, "It seemed like she was already ending the hug before it had even started." That's the effect of the tapping hug. It doesn't feel deeply connected, it feels careful, it feels guarded. It quietly suggests emotional distance, even when the woman genuinely likes him. And because these impressions happen so quickly, most people never realize why something felt slightly off. That's what makes this so fascinating. Small habits often create the biggest emotional signals without either person saying a single word. And believe me, the next mistake is even more common, and it's something many people repeat every single day without noticing the impression it leaves. The second habit is the rushed hug. This is the hug that begins and ends almost before either person has fully settled into the moment. You step in, make brief contact, and immediately pull away. The whole thing might last less than a second. It feels efficient. It feels normal. Sometimes it even feels respectful because you don't want to make the other person uncomfortable. But the problem is that the body doesn't experience warmth through speed. It experiences warmth through presence. When a hug ends almost instantly, it often communicates uncertainty instead of comfort. It can unintentionally feel like someone checked a box rather than shared a genuine moment. Most women who do this aren't trying to appear distant. Quite the opposite. Many are simply nervous. Some don't want to seem too eager. Others worry about staying too long and making the moment awkward. Those thoughts make perfect sense. But while the mind is busy managing those worries, the body sends a completely different message. The hug quietly says, "I wasn't fully here." That's the part most people miss. Physical connection isn't really measured by how long the hug lasts. It's measured by whether both people actually arrive emotionally during those few seconds. Even a brief hug can feel deeply genuine if there's no rush inside it, and a longer hug can still feel empty if both people are already thinking about what comes next. That's why slowing down just slightly often changes everything, not by turning it into something dramatic or overly romantic, but by allowing the moment to actually exist before it disappears. Those tiny pauses often create the strongest memories because they give both nervous systems enough time to recognize safety instead of pressure. And once you understand that, you'll also understand why the final habit catches so many people completely by surprise. It seems small, almost invisible. Yet it's often the one detail that stays with someone long after the evening is over. The rushed hug is one of the easiest habits to overlook because it happens so fast. You make contact for just a brief moment, and before he has even fully experienced the hug, you're already stepping away. I completely understand why this happens. Maybe you're surrounded by people and don't want the moment to feel awkward. Maybe you're feeling nervous and don't want to stay too long. Maybe you're trying not to look overly interested because you want to appear calm and confident. Those reasons are completely understandable. But what often stays with him is much simpler than everything going through your mind. His body quietly receives one message. She probably wasn't that interested. That's it. His mind usually doesn't stop to consider every possible reason why you pulled away so quickly. It simply reacts to what happened. Quick hug, quick exit, low interest. That conclusion forms almost automatically, long before logic has a chance to challenge it. Here's what makes this especially frustrating. Many women hug this way precisely because they really like the man. Their feelings make them nervous. They don't want to appear too eager, so they shorten the moment, hoping it makes them seem relaxed. But from the outside, calm and emotionally distant often look exactly the same. He can't see the thoughts racing through your head. He only feels the physical experience. While you believe you're protecting yourself by staying cool, he quietly walks away wondering whether the connection is even there. If this has ever happened without you realizing it, don't worry, because the next mistake is even more subtle, and it affects far more people than anyone imagines. The third habit creates the deepest emotional distance, because almost nobody notices they're doing it. I call it the absent hug. Your body is physically there, but your attention is somewhere else entirely. Maybe you're already planning what you're going to say after the hug ends. Maybe you're wondering who else is watching. Maybe you're feeling self-conscious, and your mind is busy analyzing every little detail about how you look or how you're coming across. The hug still happens, arms come together, contact is made. But emotionally, You're somewhere completely different. Here's what matters. Human beings naturally recognize presence. We all do. When someone is truly with you, even for only 3 or 4 seconds, the experience feels completely different. Their attention settles, their body relaxes, the moment feels real. On the other hand, when someone is mentally somewhere else, we feel that too, even if we can't explain exactly why. It's not magic, it's simply how people connect. Many women later say things like, "I couldn't stop overthinking that night," or "I was so nervous that I couldn't relax." Then they're surprised when everything afterward feels slightly disconnected, but during that hug, he often sensed the same tension you were feeling. Not because he knew your thoughts, but because your body quietly reflected them. Instead of feeling chosen in that moment, he may simply feel like he wasn't fully reaching you. Even if you spent the entire evening thinking about him, if the hug felt emotionally empty, that's often the memory that stays behind. It becomes one small piece of the picture he carries forward. These moments seem tiny while they're happening, yet they often shape the emotional tone of everything that follows. And now we come to the part that changes everything, because once you understand this final idea, the entire experience of a hug becomes completely different. Now let's talk about the kind of hug people actually remember. And I want to make something very clear before we go any further. This is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's not about learning a performance or memorizing a clever technique. It's simply about allowing your body to honestly express what you already feel inside. That's the entire difference. When you decide to hug someone, let it be an actual decision. Move toward them with quiet confidence, not dramatically, not in a way that feels forced or exaggerated, just naturally. Let your body show that you genuinely wanted this moment instead of treating it like something you needed to get over with. Wrap your arms around him with enough warmth that he truly feels your presence, not an uncomfortable squeeze, not excessive pressure. Just enough that the hug feels complete instead of unfinished. There's a huge difference between briefly touching another person and making them feel emotionally reached. Most people never notice that difference, but they absolutely feel it. And here's the detail almost everyone skips. Stay with me because this one simple shift changes everything. Take one slow, natural breath while you're still in the hug. That's it. One relaxed breath. The reason is beautifully simple. The moment you breathe, your body begins to soften. Your muscles release tension. Your nervous system settles down. And amazingly, the other person's body often responds without either of you saying a word. Human beings naturally mirror each other's emotional state. If you're holding your breath, counting the seconds, or waiting for the hug to end, that tension quietly travels across the connection. But when you allow yourself to relax for even one gentle breath, the entire interaction begins to feel safer, warmer, and far more genuine. It may seem incredibly small, but these tiny moments are often the ones people remember long after the conversation itself has faded from memory. That one slow breath can completely change the feeling of a hug. It becomes the quiet difference between two people simply being polite and two people who genuinely enjoy being close to each other. It sounds almost too simple, but that's exactly why so many people overlook it. Small details often create the biggest emotional impact. And then comes the ending, a part that deserves much more attention than it usually gets. Many women begin leaving the hug before the moment has actually finished. Their body is already moving away while the connection is still happening. Instead, allow yourself to remain there for just a tiny moment longer than you normally would. Not so long that it feels uncomfortable. Just long enough for the ending to happen naturally, instead of feeling rushed. That small pause changes the emotional message completely. Suddenly you're no longer the person who couldn't wait to leave. You're the person who stayed fully present until the very last second. That difference stays with people. When it's finally time to step back, let it happen gently. Allow your hands to leave his shoulders or back naturally, instead of pulling away quickly as though something else urgently needs your attention. The final seconds are often the strongest memory of the entire hug. That's the feeling he carries away, so let the ending feel calm, relaxed, and effortless. Then, after you've stepped back, simply look at him for a brief moment. A real look, not a rehearsed smile, not something performed because you think you're supposed to. Just genuine eye contact that quietly says, "I'm happy that happened." If you truly enjoy being with this person, that look costs nothing, yet it often communicates more than words ever could. Stay with me because this next part explains why people remember moments like these for years. I've heard countless men describe hugs they experienced years earlier, moments that probably lasted no more than 4 or 5 seconds. What's fascinating is that they rarely remember every detail. Instead, they remember how they felt. They'll often say something like, "I can't fully explain it, but she made me feel like I was the only person there." And when we carefully look back at what happened, the answer is usually surprisingly simple. She wasn't rushing. She wasn't distracted. She wasn't performing. She simply allowed herself to be completely present for those few seconds. Then, when the hug naturally ended, she looked at him with genuine warmth before stepping away. That was it. No complicated strategy, no dramatic move, just real presence. Here's something many people never hear. Attraction rarely grows from huge, unforgettable gestures. It usually grows through dozens of tiny moments that quietly build trust and comfort over time. A sincere hug becomes one of those moments because it doesn't depend on clever words or perfect timing. It doesn't need a script. It simply allows two people to share a few honest seconds together. And in today's world, where so many conversations happen while people are checking phones, thinking ahead, or mentally somewhere else, true presence has become surprisingly rare. Rare things naturally stand out. Rare experiences become memorable. That's why something as ordinary as a hug can quietly become one of the strongest emotional memories someone carries with them. But there's an even deeper reason why so many people unintentionally miss this opportunity, and once you understand it, everything else starts making much more sense. The truth is that most women who rush a hug, tap someone's back, or mentally disappear during the moment aren't doing those things because they don't care. They're usually doing them because they're afraid of appearing too interested, afraid of looking too available. Afraid that if they allow themselves to be openly warm, someone might think they're trying too hard. Those fears are incredibly common. For years, many people have been told that showing too much interest too early somehow reduces attraction. Advice from movies, magazines, social media, and even well-meaning friends often repeats the same message. Stay mysterious, don't reveal too much, make the other person chase you. So a woman hugs someone she genuinely likes, yet part of her is still trying to protect herself. She shortens the hug, she pulls away first, she adds a quick pat to make everything seem casual. Then later she wonders why the connection never really deepened. Here's something worth remembering. Warmth is not weakness. Feeling comfortable enough to simply enjoy a genuine moment is often one of the most attractive qualities another person can experience. A woman who can be emotionally present without making everything complicated creates a feeling that is difficult to describe but impossible to ignore. She isn't trying to impress anyone. She isn't constantly monitoring herself. She simply allows herself to be fully there. That's the quality people often call magnetic, even if they don't know how to explain it. They usually don't say, "She hugged perfectly." Instead, they say, "Everything just felt easy around her." That feeling comes from presence, not performance. And once you understand that, you'll begin seeing why the next part matters even more than any specific hug itself. Over the years, I've spoken with many women who seemed to have everything going for them. They were attractive, intelligent, confident in conversation, and genuinely kind. On paper, you'd expect relationships to come easily. Yet many of them still struggled to build deeper emotional connections. When we looked more closely, one pattern kept appearing. During the moments that mattered most, they weren't fully there. Their body was present, but their thoughts were somewhere else. They worried about saying the perfect thing. They wondered how they looked. They questioned whether they were showing too much or too little interest. The hug became rushed. The smile became polite instead of genuine. Eye contact disappeared almost immediately. Men often describe these women using nearly identical words. "She's really nice. She seems interesting. I just couldn't quite connect with her." Notice what they didn't say. They didn't complain about appearance or personality. They simply felt distance where they hoped to feel closeness. The women who completely changed those experiences didn't suddenly master clever techniques. They simply stopped treating every interaction like a test they had to pass. They relaxed. They allowed themselves to enjoy the moment instead of constantly evaluating it. They stopped pulling away out of fear and started trusting genuine warmth. The response they received from men changed dramatically because, for the first time, those men could actually feel who they were. Emotional connection begins there. And the beautiful part is that you don't need someone to teach you how genuine warmth feels. You already know it. You've experienced it from people who made you feel safe, welcome, and appreciated. Once you stop watching yourself from the outside and simply allow yourself to be fully present, your body naturally begins expressing that same warmth without needing to think about it. And that's often where the strongest connections quietly begin.